Hello, my name is Will Stroll. I'm one of the sales engineers at .NET New Corporation. This is the 5th video in my series of videos that are covering presentations and being a speaker. In this one, I'll be talking about the top 5 things that you should use as best practices on your desktop when preparing for a presentation. So distractions on your computer are easily prevented. They require that you do a couple of things prior to your presentation though. If you get into the routine of doing this, it can really make all the difference in the world to those that are watching your presentation. The most obvious distraction is the desktop itself. No one wants to see, and you probably don't want them to see, all of the icons on your desktop. And by the way, I've seen much worse. The average attendee will immediately start looking at all of the icons and your background. When they are doing this, they aren't really paying attention to you, and this does not add any value to your presentation at all. Instead, you should try and get your desktop looking as clean as possible. This is usually a best practice anyway, but it doesn't distract your attendees at all. Cleaning it up is quite easy, and if you prefer your desktop to have much more on it, then it is just as easy to restore. For those of you that want to require a much more manageable way to take care of your desktop, I have seen some presenters have success using something called ULTRAMON. It isn't a free app, but they use this to restore their desktop to their original state, so it can be useful. So you should also clear your web browser of any distractions as well if you plan on using it during your presentation. What you see here is not the worst example of toolbars in a web browser that I've ever seen, but notice how the browser itself is covering nearly 25% of the viewing area. Not only are your attendees wondering why so many toolbars are showing, but they're also trying to figure out what they are and what they're there for. Either way, they're distracted and they're not getting any value from your presentation or what you're saying or anything else during this time. So it's even easier to clean up your web browser in your desktop, but notice how much more of the web page we can see and show to our audience and talk about. Removing your toolbars from your web browser is usually as easy as right-clicking in the top of the browser window and unchecking the toolbars that you don't need to show, and restoring them is exactly the same way. So unless you require sound for some reason during your presentation, mute your computer entirely. Your audience is not interested in your desktop theme sounds, and you don't want unexpected sounds to come up during your presentation. If the unthinkable happens and you start to experience errors, the sounds associated with those errors would make those errors that much more distracting to your audience. In other cases, they might not have noticed them at all if it weren't for those sounds. When you begin your presentation, you should already have closed out any and all applications that either pop up notifications or that have any chance of using up any processing power that can adversely affect your presentation. The last thing that you want in a slide is for it not to load right away, or for other delays to happen because another application is taking up too much resources during your presentation. You also don't want to see your friends or significant others sending you instant messages while you're speaking to the audience for all to see. I've seen this happen, and in some cases it was embarrassing. These are some of the most common examples of applications that you want to make sure aren't running before your presentation. Whether we're talking about instant messengers, Twitter clients, or Outlook, they all have an opportunity to show messages that you don't want the audience to see. Applications like SQL Server and file sharing clients can hog up resources that your presentation might need. And Jing is perhaps the easiest app to think about, or forget about rather, but it's that little yellow half circle that can be annoying to attendees. If they're not familiar with some of these icons, while they're supposed to be listening to you, they might be trying to figure out and asking other people what these icons are for. Now, you may not have heard of Defrag or defragging. The topic is somewhat technical, but running the Defrag app should be something that you do at least once a month. Depending on how much you use your computer, maybe more often. But it reorganizes the bits that make up files on your computer, making them easier to find when applications ask for them. This process essentially makes your computer run faster. You can find the Defrag app in Windows by simply typing Defrag into the Start menu, choose it, and you run the Defrag application on your main hard drive. If you need to show or access any files during your presentation, you should have them open before the presentation begins. Have them open in their respective applications. Your presentation will go much smoother if you do this. This is one of the things that you do not want or need your visitors to see during your presentation. There's no need for them to see your file system and how you organize your files. It takes time and it's distracting. You should also take this one step further. If you're using a web browser during your presentation and expect to upload any files, you should perform this step once before the presentation begins. You should do this because the browser will remember the last place you selected a file from. This has the same benefit as preloading files. You don't want to have to browse for anything, and your attendees don't want to have to wait for you to find the file, all the while inspecting your file system. Virtual machines aren't for everyone, but if you have the resources to use them, they can be a lifesaver, especially in the event for something as horrible as your computer not turning on happens. So using this tip, I have literally seen someone recover from a crashed laptop. He merely moved his virtual machine to another laptop and was able to give his presentation. So this will be one or more of the less important tips depending on how you do or do not use this option. First, always have backups of your presentation and any files that it needs. This might include notes, demo environments, code samples, slide decks, and more. I usually keep copies of mine on the computer itself, on a thumb drive, and also available for download from my website. It also might be a great idea to develop and plan your entire presentation to run on a virtual machine of some kind. If you're not familiar with this concept, it is just a technology that allows you to have a virtual environment of Windows, Linux, or Mac that you can use as a sandbox, so to speak. There are numerous advantages to this approach. Among them is that you'll be presenting on a very clean environment that is immune from your daily browsing and work habits, and also makes your presentation 100% portable. I've seen people use this method and quickly recover from a system crash by simply taking the virtual machine from one computer to another. Another part of this tip is to keep your virtual machine and any required presentation files on an external drive. This allows you to more easily move from one virtual machine to another with all requisite files. So just to review, be sure to remove all unnecessary distractions from your desktop and any other applications that you might be using during your presentation. Close out any non-critical applications. You can remove them later or reopen them later, but they may slow down your computer, or worse, show embarrassing or private information during your presentation. Be sure to defrag your computer regularly, but especially the day before your presentation. Open up any files that you intend to use or show during your presentation before people have the chance to see you do it. Avoid browsing your file system during your presentation at all costs. If you can, plan and run your presentation on a virtual machine. Keep copies of that virtual machine and any other files that you need on an external hard drive to make your presentation portable so you can move to another machine in the event of a disaster. And of course, make sure that you turn off your sound.